right, thanks for coming back for part 2 of how I created this dot mandala over a pour. This is 1/4 of the quad, so you can see that it actually is kind of nice just as an individual piece, but I prefer them hung all together as a quad. In part 1, we did a lot of time lapse, and I took you through just the beginning of how the design evolved. In this part, we are going to do it real time. Making dot mandalas is very kind of painstaking, time-consuming work, but while I was doing it, I shared with you a lot of my thoughts about creating art in general, my philosophy and my approach to making art, as well as my thought process on how this piece developed, so every step of the way. I'm talking to you about what's going on with the paint, what's going on with the design, what's going on in my head, because it really does require explanation what goes on in this head. If you're an artist and you like that kind of thing and you want to get a real serious inside look about how another artist thinks, please come along for part 2. Well, it's the next day. Everything is dry. My palette from yesterday only needed a little bit of sprucing, but for the most part the plastic wrap kept it wonderful overnight. And right now I'm gonna go in while everything is nice and dry and I can touch the middle without worrying about getting my arms in my work. I'm gonna go and add some top dots and do just a little bit of embellishing right here. And let's see, I think I'm gonna start that in the center. I already put top dots on these. This is the dark red with the medium red, but I'm adding a third dot on top of these because it was very difficult to tell the difference between those reds, and I do want them to pop some. I don't know how closely you can see this. I guess that depends on your viewing experience. But some of the splatter that I did ended up on some of my dots, and I'm going to leave that for the most part because I like the overall look of the spatter that I did here. And so in those few places where it does encroach, I'm going to allow that to exist. I don't think it detracts from the mandala at all. So I'm just going to take you along with me. Happy to have the company today. I brightened this red up a whole lot, so I think that's going to help where I'm embellishing. And I learned, since I've only been doing dot mandalas for a short while, that I really do need to pay much closer attention to my consistency across the board. I do have to further perfect my system. I do like the medium that I'm using, but I have to get a little bit more consistent in my consistency, so to speak, in order to get a uniform result in my dots. Like, so for instance, here there's still a lot of dimension to that dot, and here these dots are very flat. That had everything to do with how thin or thick my paint was. I'm just sprucing things up a little bit, adding some gold on top of my copper. Now you see how that gold leaves a peak? It's because this paint is thicker than, say, my yellows were. And I could flatten that out with my little tool, or I could leave it alone. And that's a personal preference. Some people like the peaks, Some people shoot for a dome-shaped dot. Some people like a very flat dot. You do what you like. It's your art. All right. I need to come in and do some smaller gold dots here. And I want to do a white dot here. So where do we take the design from here? It could be finished, but I don't think it is. I don't want to come out any further here, which means I don't want to come out any further here. And I do intend for the design to really be in the corner, so I want to leave this space a whole lot. So I'm going to be looking for a finial of some kind to do right here, and I'm still thinking about that. And then I do have the option of making one more loop coming down here, but I'm thinking about exactly what I want that to look like. So I have now officially departed from my inspiration piece, and I am just thinking through how I want to bring this baby in for a landing. And if you do top dots, I think it actually helps to add dimension. That again is entirely up to your discretion. Look at your piece and see how you would like it to appear at the end of the day. And whoops, I dipped to the wrong end. You know, art is a lot of feel. I spend a lot of time stopping and looking at my work, and I know it sounds kind of spacey, but it speaks to me, and it tells me. I've said in previous videos that my art is very much a collaboration between me and the medium or media. I try to tell it what to do, and then it tells me what to do. And I honestly would not have it any other way. So right now it's, I got a little sloppy on that one. Right now it's telling me where it wants these top dots. And in a minute, I'm going to tell it what I want to do with the finials. One of my thoughts about adding the top dots here is that, you know, some of this one got a little wonky and this one got a little wonky. I think I was calling it kind of Dr. Seussy yesterday. So one of the ways to kind of try to redeem that, since I can't really paint over it, is to add these top dots. It kind of reintroduces a sense of pattern. Okay. Well, that just got a whole lot more interesting in a hurry, didn't it? So I'm noticing here, these aren't showing up very much. It does show up here, but it doesn't really show up in very many other places. And that's what's leading me to believe I may want to do one more loop here, but I don't want I want it to have more of a sense of undulation, so I don't want to fill up too much space. So I'm going to do these finials first and see where they take me, and from there I'll figure out what I want to do next. So I mixed up this purple. It was intended to just kind of deepen my deep red a little bit, and it got completely transformed. and that's in here, and then I lightened it up even further, and it's in here as well. So I think what I will do, oh yeah, it is right here, is give myself, I think I know what I have in mind. I had it in mind last night when I went to bed. See if I can make it a reality. I'm leaving some room between these dots and what's below them because I want my next set of dots to come right underneath it. And I'm going to come back in with that same color. Let's go here first. And when you get out to the outer sections of the canvases in a project like this where you can't turn your artwork, it becomes very important to remember where the wet paint is so you don't stick your arm in it. So I'm leaving that intentionally open at the top. I switched to a smaller dotting tool from those initial three. And the size of your dots depends on the size of your tool, but it also depends on how far down you're pushing. It depends on how much paint is actually on the tool, and you do want to really load it up to get a good dot. I did a whole bunch of mandalas on cardstock first, black cardstock. I'm sniffling, I apologize. Just to get a feel for it before I started working on canvas, and I experimented with a bunch of techniques with texture, the thickness of the paint, with design and motif, until I started feeling really comfortable about how mandalas work. And I would encourage you to do the same. I bought a package of 12 by 12 black cardstock. And it's hard to talk while I'm doing this. And I just sat down every night and made a mandala. I think in my April update, if you look at my channel news, there is a section there where I do show you some of those early mandalas. So feel free to check that out. So this is an idea that was in my head last night. Just to kind of create a sense of finality to this. I'm trying to create like a fountain look. So this is kind of like a cup, and then there's going to be some, what I see is like water spouts coming out of it. I think I'm going to go in with some gold on top of that. It's pretty subtle, which is great. And some of it's integrating almost indistinguishably from my background spatter. And I think that's okay. I think everything's okay. I just don't sweat it. It's one of those things where if you have an initial reaction to the overall look of this piece, it'll be one thing, but if you decide you want to own it and take it home and hang it on your wall, the more you look at it, the more you'll start to see some of these eensy little dots, and it kind of gives new life to it every time you look at it. And then this lighter color that shows up a little better will help you see maybe the little more subtle ones that are underneath it. Okay. This is the next logical moment, just to stop and consider. What do I think of that? So I'm going to leave it alone for the time being, and the next decision is, do I want to do something coming down here? And I think I think a lot of these colors are so pale, I do want to come back, so reds. That's nice. Yeah, that was a good idea. I like that a lot. Working with some of the symmetry issues here, just to try to get something that looks consistent and consistently pleasant. And that's telling me this blank space in here kind of wants something. There you go. So I'm not fast forwarding through this so I can share my thought process with you, because, you know, once you excuse me, once you establish your initial motif, then it becomes kind of autopilot. And then once you get out to the end, you start to get a little bit more innovative and say, how can I take this in kind of a unexpected and delightful direction? Let's see. These are just little finishing touches, little flourishes. And it's helping me cover a couple of those spatter places and places where the background color encroached a little bit. Get your focus back on the actual design. And because I don't have 100% symmetry, I also have to think about if I do something here, will I also be able to do it here? Sometimes it's okay if you bump into a situation like that to switch to a smaller tip. Like I was just using a 5, you might want to switch to a 2 just to get the same number of dots in. Sometimes it's okay to have an uneven number of dots, like over here I have more dots because my piece isn't entirely symmetrical. Well, oh, I see I left out some pink dots. Let's come in and fill those in over here. There we go. I think this is essentially complete. The next steps will be to let it dry. I may add a couple more top dots when these are dry. And then when everything is completely dry and cured, I am going to come in with a damp cloth and I'll be able to remove any remaining guidelines that are showing. Those were just done. Let me grab it and show you. Those were done with this. It's called a Quilter's Choice. Let me see, I'll show it to you this way. Quilter's Choice. This came in a package of 4. It says Roxanne's Quilter's Choice. They're chalk pencils. These are silver and white. So I got a package of 2 silver and 2 white. And on black paper, I find the silver works a lot better in terms of not showing up so much. So that's what I've been using on the cardstock. And that's what I used here as well. There we are. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Please watch some more videos. There's a ton more art videos. We also do cooking videos around here. You like to cook, right? You like to eat. So check out some of those as well. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I will see you next time.